Hello.
Welcome to A Kitchen Talk with Brad and Marie. One dynamic that we see very often in relationships is put downs.
Yeah, it's constant criticism, and it can be just small little comments all the time.
Tone of voice, look at the head. So it's normally coming from a person that is a samurai or a peacekeeper. In other words, they're doing the criticism very subtly, and generally the person they're doing it to is probably a Viking, and they don't actually see it coming and they don't hear it. So this dynamic can go on for years in a relationship, and eventually, of course...
Well, how that plays out is that constant criticism, and then the other person just explodes.
Yes. And then that person that's copying the criticism looks like the baddie in the relationship. And that's not always the case, because the person doing the criticism could have built up like a resentment. So if you've, as a guy, you've had a lot of women who have been, not nice to you over the years, that may come out in subtle put downs to your partner. Or if it's a woman, same thing, right? She's had these bad experiences growing up with men, and she's subtly putting her partner down. So step number one is to
recognize it. Just recognize the dynamic that's what's happening. If you're constantly rearing up, just put a pause in there. Hold on. Why do I keep rearing up? Is it constant comments and constant digs? In that case, be aware of what's making you blow.
Yes.
Or if you're with someone that does blow up, need to look at, what am I doing? Like, what is my part in this equation? What am I doing? Because quite often you don't realize that you're constantly criticizing.
Step number two is to stop it. So if you're giving the criticism, as Marie said, you need to recognize it, the pattern that you're doing, and stop it. If you're receiving it, you also need to recognize that you're taking on the criticism. No one can influence you or give you criticism unless you let it trigger you. So if you're finding you're triggered all the time and you're exploding because of these subtle little digs, then you're just as bad as a criticizer. You're taking it on and exploding and becoming the baddie in the situation.
And often to stop it, we need an awareness around it. We recognize it. And often we do the behavior and we recognize it afterwards.
Yes.
And then we become more aware and we recognize it as we're doing it, but still don't have that control. And then the next step is we recognize it before we do it. So then we've got the power then to change it. So that is a journey on its own.
And if you're receiving the criticism, the important step here is to stop it when it's happening. So if your partner is saying something to you, it's like, well, thank you very much for that. I understand that. I appreciate that. Don't take it on. And last step is, in any relationship, but particularly with criticism, recognize what's their stuff and what's your stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what patterns are coming up from you for you to be able to accept the criticism, taking it on. And equally, for the other person, what's causing them to put out that criticism. And this principle applies certainly with criticism, but applies across all relationships.
And I think it's so important to really, in that clarity, work out what's my stuff and what's his stuff. Because I find that a lot of people can go to depression because they're taking on someone else's stuff. So get clarity in, because when you get clarity on what's your stuff, you're helping them and you're not taking on theirs. You're helping them pick up and clean up their own back garden.
Absolutely, because when you go into, oh, you're doing this and you're doing that, then what you're doing is you're making yourself the focus of the interaction. When you're very clear on what's your stuff and what's my stuff, and you're dealing with your own stuff, the other person, if they want to continue it on, literally can see in the clarity of the mirror that you're creating their stuff. So you don't need to tell them. Yes. They'll see it for themselves.
Yes. So take some time today after watching this and just look at what's mine and what's his. Great
tip, guys. Use it in your relationships, and we hope to see you either in our virtual code event, which is online, you can take it on anytime, or in our live events being held in Perth. So now that the borders are open, you Eastern Staters can get on a plane, come over here and join us. Thanks for being with us in the group, and we'll see you again soon.